This video is part 7 of chapter 9, the muscular system. This video introduces muscle twitches, compares isometric and isotonic muscle contractions, discusses how muscles increase their force of contraction, compares fast and slow twitch muscle fibers, and describes the 4 methods muscles use to produce ATP. Let's begin with learning what a muscle twitch is. A twitch is a muscle fiber's response to a single action potential sent down a motor neuron. Twitches occur in laboratory settings and not normally in our bodies. As a reminder, regardless of the strength of the stimulus, be it large or small, the change in voltage in an action potential does not change. It will only go up to about positive 20 millivolts. Now let's compare isometric and isotonic contractions. There are 2 main types of contractions, isometric and isotonic. Isometric contractions occur when you try to lift something that is too heavy. In this case, the tension increases in the muscle, but the muscle does not shorten. Isometric contractions also occur in our postural muscles because they also do not shorten. Isotonic contractions result in a change in the muscle's length and the tension is constant. There are 2 types of isotonic contractions, concentric and eccentric. In concentric contractions, the muscle shortens. An example is the shortening of the biceps brachii while picking up a book. In eccentric contractions, the muscle elongates, like the biceps brachii elongating as you lay down a book. Our next topic is learning how muscles can increase the force of their contractions. The strength of a muscle contraction increases when there is an increase in a number of muscle fibers contracting, or when there is an increase in the amount of force in each muscle fiber. We're going to focus on the second one. How can our body increase the force in each muscle fiber? The answer is by increasing the number of cross bridges it forms. The number of cross bridges formed in a muscle fiber is affected by 3 factors. The frequency of stimulation, which means how often the muscle fiber is stimulated, the diameter of the muscle fiber, and the length of the muscle fiber at the time of contraction. We will briefly go through each of these ways that increase the number of cross bridges formed and thereby increase the strength of a muscle contraction. How does the frequency of stimulation increase the strength of a muscle contraction? By a phenomenon called TREPI. TREPI is the concept that at a low frequency, stimulations cause a muscle contraction, and then the muscle is allowed to fully relax. But when stimulations occur at higher frequencies, muscles don't have time to fully relax, which means the muscles don't have enough time to actively transport the calcium back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This causes intracellular calcium levels to increase, and this leads to increased numbers of cross bridges formed, and therefore a greater force in each contraction. This continues until a maximum force is reached and no relaxation occurs between contractions. Muscle fibers stimulated at greater frequencies first display wave summation, followed by incomplete tetanus, and finally complete tetanus. With wave summation and incomplete tetanus, the muscle fiber partially relaxes between stimuli. With complete tetanus, there is no relaxation between stimuli, and the muscle stays in the contracted state. The image on the right displays these concepts. The diameter of a muscle fiber also affects the number of cross bridges formed and therefore the strength of a muscle contraction. Larger diameter fibers, in general, have more myofibrils. This allows for more cross bridges to form, so larger diameter fibers produce a greater force of contraction than smaller diameter fibers. The force of muscle contraction is also affected by the length of the muscle fiber when the contraction occurs. Normal resting length, shown as length number 2 in the image, is the optimal fiber length that produces the most cross bridges and therefore the greatest amount of tension in the muscle fiber. When the length is shorter, as shown in length number 1, or the length is longer, as in number 3, less tension can be formed. The graph shows the differences in tension. Now let's address the different type of muscle fibers. There are two main types of muscle fibers, fast twitch and slow twitch. Fast twitch muscle fibers contract quickly, but they also fatigue quickly. On the other hand, slow twitch fibers contract more slowly, and they are slow to fatigue. These differences are due to slightly different types of myosin. The proportion of each type of fiber in different muscles differs depending on what the muscle's function is. Here is a comparison of the specific 3 muscle fiber types. They are slow oxidative, fast oxidative glycolytic, and fast glycolytic. Let's begin on the left with slow oxidative. They contract slowly and are very resistant to fatigue. They generate their ATP from aerobic respiration and are used in the maintenance of posture, as well as in endurance activities. Slow oxidative fibers are found in our postural muscles and in our lower limbs. In the middle, we have fast oxidative glycolytic fibers. They contract rapidly and have intermediate fatigue resistance. They make their ATP using aerobic respiration and glycolysis. Fast oxidative glycolytic fibers are used in endurance activities, and they're found mainly in the lower limbs. Lastly, fast glycolytic fibers contract rapidly and fatigue rapidly. They generate ATP from glycolysis. Fast glycolytic fibers are used in rapid, intense movements of short duration. Think of bench pressing or picking up a dumbbell very quickly. They are found mainly in the upper limbs. Next, let's address the 4 ways muscles can make ATP. There are 3 major areas that require ATP in muscle contraction: the movement of the myosin head, the sodium-potassium pump to maintain resting membrane potential, and the calcium reuptake in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Unfortunately, muscle fibers only have enough stored ATP for 5 to 6 seconds of contraction, so they have to make ATP in other ways. These are the 4 ways muscle fibers make ATP to supply their energy needs. First is the conversion of 2 ADP molecules into 1 ATP and 1 AMP. This occurs using the enzyme adenylate kinase. It provides 2 to 3 seconds of energy. The second way muscles make ATP is by transferring a phosphate from creatine phosphate to ADP to create ATP. This requires the enzyme creatine kinase and provides 5 to 6 seconds of energy for the muscle. The third way to make ATP is through anaerobic respiration. You may recognize this process as glycolysis. It uses glucose but does not require oxygen and produces 30 to 40 seconds of ATP for muscles to use. The last way muscles generate ATP is through aerobic respiration. This process occurs in the mitochondria and produces hours of ATP for the muscles. You might be wondering, why not just to use aerobic respiration since it provides hours of ATP? It's because it takes the longest to make the ATP. When a muscle begins all of these muscles at the same time, all these methods at the same time, ATP is generated first by the conversion of ADP using adenylate kinase, and the others are still working on making their ATP. Then a few seconds later, the ATP from method 2 is available. A little while later, the ATP from method 3 is available. So we have those three methods providing ATP while the aerobic respiration is going through its process to make its ATP. This video introduced muscle twitches, compared isometric and isotonic muscle contractions, discussed how muscles increase the force of contraction, compared fast and slow twitch muscle fibers, and described the four methods muscles use to produce ATP.